My name is Linda Hall. I'm 68. On what should have been the brightest night of my life, my son's wedding, I discovered how vicious people can be when they decide someone is beneath them. Before I tell you the whole thing, tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it where you are? Drop a like if you're listening, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because this night changed my life forever. That June evening in Scottsdale, Arizona, the Fairmont Ballroom could have been lifted from a magazine spread. 20-foot ceilings draped in gold. White roses the size of dinner plates in crystal vases on every table. Imported orchids lining the aisles, so flawless they almost looked unreal. The air smelled like haute perfume and cut flowers. This was not merely a wedding, it was a spectacle of wealth, where even the atmosphere seemed to carry a price tag. 650 people filled the space. Billionaires, lawmakers, socialites who live for events where cameras catch them in couture and conversation revolves around brands and seating charts. And me, I was at table 36. If you don't know what table 36 means in a crowd like this, let me explain. It's the table close to the exit. The one reserved for guests they feel obliged to include but don't truly want. So far from where the family sat that you might as well be attending from another building. While the bride's people basked in flashes and toasts, I was tucked behind a decorative column in a back corner. I wore a plain dress I'd bought at a department store 2 years prior. I'd worn it to 3 other gatherings. My flats were well loved, soles repaired twice. My purse had a strap fraying at the edge, stitched back together with thread that didn't match. I didn't look like I belonged. People noticed. From the moment I entered, silk-gowned women whispered. Men in tailored suits glanced me over like I was a puzzle. I told myself it didn't matter. I was there for my son, Andrew. His joy was what counted. Yet the looks and the murmur piled up until they became impossible to ignore. At the table beside mine, 3 women stopped being subtle. She looks like she took the bus, one said, adjusting a diamond bracelet. That's his mother, another sniffed, lifting her champagne as if the words didn't hurt. The third laughed. I kept my head down, smoothed my skirt, breathed slowly. I would not make a scene. I would not humiliate my son. Then it escalated. Charles Whitmore, Rebecca's father, took the microphone. He and his wife Diane wore wealth like armor. Diane's gown probably cost more than many people's cars. Charles's gold watch flashed under the ballroom lights. He scanned the room like a king and, when his eyes found me, the smile vanished into something thinner, colder. He leaned toward the mic and said, plain as a bell, "Look at that trash. That's his mother." The words carried. For a beat, the room froze. Then a ripple of laughter, at first hesitant, then braver, as if the mic had given permission. Rebecca, the bride, laughed. Not an awkward spill of sound, but a clean, delighted laugh, like this was part of the evening's entertainment. Andrew heard it. Our eyes met. I waited for him to step forward, to correct his future family, to tell them who I was. He looked away. Something inside me broke, not softly but violently. I pushed my chair back. The scrape of the legs on marble turned heads. People probably expected me to slink out, humiliated. They were wrong. I stood. My hands trembled, but my feet held me steady. I walked through that crowd. 650 pairs of eyes followed. Some were amused, some puzzled, a few reddened with embarrassment. I passed centerpieces that likely cost more than my grocery bill. Memories followed me. The night my husband died when Andrew was 5, the years of double shifts and sewing patches on his clothes, the nights counting pennies so he could have pencils and cereal and every ordinary thing a child needs. I had done everything for him. And on his wedding night, his new family mocked me, and his son looked away. Charles moved to block me, hand held up like a traffic cop. "Ma'am, this is family time," he said sharp, and asked me to return to my seat. I stopped a few feet from him and said quietly, "That's exactly why I'm here." Diane offered syrupy politeness. There must be some misunderstanding. And Rebecca pleaded for later, urgent and fluttering. No, I said. That one syllable landed in the ballroom like a bell. I stepped around them, grabbed the microphone, and faced those 650 people. If I'm trash, I began, voice steady, why does my signature pay for this venue? Heads turned. Whispers started. I kept going. Why does my name cover the catering, the flowers, the open bar, the 5-star honeymoon to Bali already booked and paid for? Gasps spread. Faces drained. Phones came out. People were no longer discreet. I paid for it, I said. Meridian Ridge Holdings. I let the company name sit in the air. It's a company I own. I am the authorized signatory. I paid the Fairmont rental, $487,000, paid in full 3 months ago. Catering, $72,000. Flowers, $38,000. Photographer and videographer, $22,000. The honeymoon to Bali, $83,000. Booked, confirmed, paid. Chaos followed. Charles's face went white. Diane's lips parted and closed like a stunned fish. Rebecca stumbled. Andrew moved toward me, incredulous. Mom, is this for real? Yes, I said. It's real. They asked why I'd hidden it. I explained. I never wanted recognition or the way money changes people. I wanted Andrew to grow up with work and character, not entitlement. I didn't tell him because I didn't want him to be raised different. I lived simply by choice, not necessity. I had built Meridian Ridge quietly. One distressed commercial property in Tempe bought years ago with sweat and patched up work, then another and another. I'd reinvested, weathered the 2008 crash while others panicked and sold, bought foreclosed strip malls, medical offices, industrial land. I invested early in a medical device company that later went public. I reinvested gains. Over decades the company grew until, by last year, it was worth more than $3 billion. People who had laughed at my dress and my purse suddenly wanted proof. I pulled from my frayed handbag a folded copy of a wire transfer confirmation. Meridian Ridge Holdings, authorized by L. Hall. I held it up. Charles snatched it, scanned it, turned red and then white. They had all assumed the LLC was part of their own financial network. Why would they check? Because someone dressed like me couldn't possibly have that kind of money. That was the assumption. I told them why I paid anonymously. Because I didn't want their gratitude to be tied to money, didn't want them thinking my help bought them anything. Andrew had come to me embarrassed and out of options. He asked if I could help. I agreed, through Meridian Ridge, so the help could come without changing the way people treated him, or me. That was the intention. Their assumption about me was the problem. Why would you do this anonymously? Diane asked, flustered. I answered, because the moment people know you have money, everything shifts. They expect, they demand, they redefine their relationships with you. Then I said something they all needed to hear. I told the room that Meridian Ridge's records are public, that the LLC is registered in my name, that every invoice had been paid through accounts I control. I gave more detail. The first Tempe commercial space, 12,200 square feet, bought for $42,000 in 2003 with an $8,000 down payment. Rented it out. Reinvested the modest profit. Bought a foreclosed strip mall in Mesa for $98,000. Filled the units. By 2007 Meridian Ridge held 5 properties. By 2015, valuations had risen dramatically. In 2010 I invested $50,000 in a medical device startup. By its IPO my stake was worth millions. I sold some, reinvested others. By 2018 Meridian Ridge's portfolio had topped $1 billion. Last year, over $3 billion. The room was quiet, listening to the woman they had mocked explain, calmly and factually, how she had built everything. Diane sputtered about this being dramatic. No, I said. We discuss this now. I looked at Andrew and said, I paid for this because I love you. But I will not stay silent while people treat me with contempt. Then I delivered the part that made some of them pale. The contracts. Every vendor agreement included a clause I insisted on. As the authorized signatory, I retained the right to retract payment up to 30 days after the event with no penalty. I had lawyers. I had reviewed each contract before signing. I pulled out the venue contract and read the clause aloud. Charles snatched the paper and scanned it, his color draining. "This can't be enforceable," he stammered. "It is," I replied. "And I am exercising that right." The gasps were immediate. "You can't just cancel payments after services were provided," Diane cried. "I can when the contract allows it," I said. "If vendors want to keep working with you, they can, but not on my dime anymore. When a payment is retracted, responsibility reverts to the party who requested services. That would be you." I listed the numbers. Venue $487,000, catering $72,000, flowers $38,000, photography and videography $22,000, cake $4,000, honeymoon $83,000. Total, nearly $700,000. If they wanted to keep any of it, they'd need to pay. The Whitmores had promised a certain social image, and they assumed someone else bore the cost. Now the invoices were on their doorstep. A Whitmore lawyer pushed forward, warning of legal trouble. I said calmly that my legal team had vetted everything. "If anyone is worried about optics," I said, "perhaps consider how it looks to mock a guest at a wedding." The room was silent, watching my son. Andrew, trembling, finally spoke. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have defended you." He was raw, ashamed. He said he'd been afraid of causing a scene, of losing the world he thought he wanted. He promised to do better. I told him forgiveness isn't a free gift. Earn it with actions. He promised to try. I told the Whitmores the cancellations had been processed and their balances were now their responsibility. "Consider it an expensive lesson in respect," I said. "Respect," I reminded them, "isn't bought with labels or bank balances. It's given to every person." I left without looking back. Outside in the warm Scottsdale night, Andrew caught up and asked to come with me. We walked through the hotel lobby to the courtyard, sat by the fountain, and talked. He admitted he'd known, in small ways, how they treated me during planning and been afraid to act. He called himself a coward. I told him he'd seen enough to know better now. Over the next day, the story spread. By Sunday my phone rang non-stop. People wanted to know if the rumors were true. By Monday the local social scene buzzed with headlines. The groom's mother secretly funded and then retracted a $700,000 wedding. The Fairmont confirmed Meridian Ridge had paid. The vendors announced they were seeking payment from the Whitmores per their backup agreements. The Whitmores hired lawyers and threatened action. My attorneys pushed back with contracts, emails, confirmations. The case fizzled. The bills landed where my contracts said they would. The Whitmores scrambled, selling investments, borrowing from retirement, asking favors. Pride hurts differently when it's public. I went back to my ordinary life. Same car. Same grocery runs. Same simple clothes. The only difference was how people looked at me. Not because of the money, but because I had finally stood up. Neighbors nodded. Clerks made time to chat. The barista at my regular coffee shop asked how I was. Genuinely. The lesson they learned wasn't about wealth. It was about dignity. A few weeks later a woman from the wedding, one of those who'd sat near the front, knocked on my door admitting she'd been ashamed she hadn't spoken up. She wanted to apologize. We talked. She asked how I'd managed to build everything and stay humble. I told her, remembering where I came from. Remembering nights of worry after my husband's death, the years of sacrifice, the choices to repair rather than replace. Money gave me options. It didn't erase the memory of struggle. It didn't alter who I was. Andrew stayed with me for a while. He told me Rebecca had ended things, accusing him of choosing his mother over her world. I didn't mind. Better to learn the truth now than be years into a marriage built on the wrong foundation. As for the Whitmores, they paid. The contracts were ironclad. Their lawyers threatened, but our legal documentation was clear. They closed one humiliating chapter, and I went back to quietly growing Meridian Ridge. But I did something else, too. I started the David Hall Foundation, small, intentionally low profile, to help single mothers learn investing basics and to provide seed money for women who want to build businesses. I named it for my late husband, because he would have loved the idea of his legacy helping others. Looking back, I don't regret that night. Not the humiliation, not the confrontation, not pulling the plug on payments. I learned a hard truth. Wealth doesn't excuse cruelty. Status doesn't justify disdain. Class isn't what you wear. It's how you behave when you have power over others. Real class is defending the vulnerable, treating everyone with dignity. Real class was something the Whitmores lacked. I wore a simple dress. I sat at table 36. They called me trash. They were wrong. The woman they mocked paid for the whole event. The woman they dismissed built an empire without fanfare. And I discovered that respect can be demanded as well as earned. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated? How did you respond? If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories about standing up and refusing to be small. Everyone deserves respect.